Hi, welcome to another episode of the ARC podcast with Jen and Lindsay. How are you doing today, Jen?
I'm great, Lindsay. I'm excited about our guests today. You and I had the pleasure of meeting one of our guests in DC this year when we went to the disability policy seminar. We always meet somebody really cool that we're going to have them on the pod.
Yeah. This year we got lucky and we said that twice. So
we did. So
Sam was our first, and then Chloe eventually when her schedule slows down.
Love Chloe.
Yes, I know. You meet
so many people
at those seminars, and I wish we could have everybody that we meet on there, especially the self-advocates. Like, we just have to keep bringing them on because they're the best, and they give you
they are
gold information for our kids. Basically, this whole podcast is just so Lindsay and I can
meet people,
be better parents for our kids.
Yeah.
So
we're planning on our kids' futures by our guests.
Exactly. Exactly. All right. So I'm going to introduce two of our guests. So we are talking to the co-founder and president of EmpowerMe Living this morning, Emily Kendall. Emily is responsible for the overall strategic direction and vision for the company EmpowerMe Living, as well as marketing, branding, and sales. Her role is instrumental in fundraising, establishing key partnerships, and building the network that will support residents and their families. Emily is highly experienced marketing and sales pro with a 20-year career focused on high growth companies. How can it be 20? You look so young.
Oh, thank you for that. Thank you. Yes. All over.
She spent over 10 years in commercial real estate, leading the sales team for a student housing company that went public, and then overseeing the marketing strategy for a multi-billion-dollar equity raise at a grocery-anchored shopping center company. She spent the last 3 years in helping female-founded venture capital firms raise equity before co-founding EmpowerMe Living with her husband and partner, Mark. Emily is a mom of 3 kids and stepmom of 3. Her son Luke was born with Down syndrome. Woohoo! Like my daughter. Emily graduated magna cum laude from Furman University with dual degrees in business administration and Spanish. Emily, thank you for coming on the podcast.
Lindsay and Jen, I'm so excited to be here. Thank you for having me. And I'm so glad that Sam connected us. Sam is amazing, as you know, and we're thrilled to have her on our team.
Yeah, so Sam Klever came with us in DC, and she was there to talk to all of our reps about EmpowerMe Living. And I learned a ton there, and I was like, you know what, you got to tell all of our listeners about it. So Sam Klever is the director of resident and community engagement at EmpowerMe Living. She serves as the director. She is responsible for residents' life programming, building and maintaining a network of partnerships, supports, and resources for the residents, and fostering community engagement. Her passion for supporting the IDD community extends in both her personal and professional life. In 2014, she experienced the profound loss of her little brother, Daniel, who had intellectual and developmental disabilities coupled with severe medical complexities. Danny's life fuels her advocacy for individuals with disabilities and dedication to creating thoughtful spaces where people with IDD are valued, heard, and included. Prior to joining EmpowerMe Living, Sam dedicated 5 years of her career to teaching special education in 2 school districts in the greater Cincinnati area. A little fun fact, Sam was Luke Kendall's very first preschool teacher. Makes sense. We keep you guys around. This is what we do. We don't let you leave after you teach our kids. When we find you. And
we Sam you in the back corner and bring you out when we need you again.
Exactly. Have you on speed dial after like 2 weeks of school. Sorry.
Yeah, why is this happening? Come back.
I'm here for it.
I know. We already asked Sam like all of our teacher questions too, like when we were with her, like, what about this? I think she helped me with something with Evie. I forget what it was, but now when you find the experts, you got to keep them. So she graduated with a bachelor's degree in special ed from Wittenberg University while playing softball. She also holds a master's degree in special ed from Xavier University. Woo! So thank you both for coming. And I want you both to talk about EmpowerMe Living. So Emily, start us off. We want to hear all there is about EmpowerMe Living and what the plan is here in Cincinnati, Ohio, and beyond.
All right. Thank you for that, Jen. like you said in reading my bio, my husband Mark and I started EmpowerMe Living in late 2022. We had an opportunity to figure out what we wanted to be when we grew up, and that was fun. So we decided to really look into, okay, Mark has a background in commercial construction. He's built over $375 million worth of projects, ranging from huge multi-million-dollar projects like the Duke Law Library expansion and renovation and the NASCAR Hall of Fame down in Charlotte, North Carolina, to historical renovation here in downtown Cincinnati, and a lot of multifamily housing all across the country. And then you read a little bit more about my background. Mark and I met at the student housing company where we both worked. He built the student housing communities, and I was responsible for leasing them up. And that was all over the country. And we started to think about our backgrounds and where our careers have led us, and what is housing going to look like for Luke when he grows up. You all know this as parents. We've had a tremendous amount of success with early intervention, early health care, education, and that investment has meant that people are living longer. So Luke's going to outlive us. And what's that going to look like? It's time for us to really start focusing on keep the investment in the early outcomes, right? But now we also need to make sure that we focus on adults, because adults are living longer. So we started to put together this plan of, okay, where is Luke going to live and what's that going to look like? And then we realized there are millions of people in this same situation. And for us, we started EmpowerMe Living because we want to build a network of housing choices for adults with intellectual and developmental disabilities. So what that means for us is that someone like Luke could come in to one of our properties and say, hi, I'm Luke. These are my support needs. These are my housing preferences. What do you have for me? And we'd be able to say, great, Luke, you want to live in an accessory dwelling unit in your parents' backyard for a while you're gaining skills to live independently. Let's do that. Or you want to live in a neuro-inclusive community in a more suburban setting. Great. Let's do that. Or you want to live in a more urban mixed use development with retail and restaurants, where you can access, the bus and get downtown and go to Reds games. We can have that. It's like all of us sitting around on the phone, we have options, and those don't always exist for adults with intellectual and developmental disabilities. So we decided to pool our expertise and start EmpowerMe Living. And we are very fortunate to have an incredible team that we've built over the past 2 years, Sam being one of them. And of course, her background lends beautifully to our mission. And then we have Kyla Hemler, who is a veteran social worker who has worked as a guardian ad litem in jobs and family services, advocating for kids in foster care, many of whom have experienced IDD. So she's very well versed in navigating social support systems. And then our partner, Bill McCoy, he is a successful entrepreneur, and he has a 30-year-old son, Sam, that has Down syndrome and a seizure disorder. And so we've banded together to really focus on delivering on our vision of housing options. And we are going to use the power of private capital and social impact investing to help solve this crisis. It is indeed a crisis, and the current landscape of nonprofits and government systems aren't going to meet the demands. So we really need to leverage the private sector and get everybody working together to try and bring forth new innovative solutions. So that's a little bit more about EmpowerMe Living. We are professional real estate and construction experts on a mission to change the housing landscape for adults with intellectual and developmental disabilities.
That's great. And yeah, I think when we met Sam, we were in DC advocating for all kinds of different things for people with intellectual and developmental disabilities. But housing is always in like the top 5 things especially when you talk to adults. And you talk to families who have adult children who are still living at home and are like, we're on a list. But then even when you're on a voucher, waiting lists, your options are so limited. And I think a lot of us, we know a few places around Cincinnati that are doing great work, but not for enough of us. Like how many waiting lists, we're always on waiting lists and we're kind of tired of being on waiting lists.
Right?
And
Mm-hmm.
I will say this is a breath of fresh air to know that there's more than one option too, because I feel like, we're kind of just always, I feel like we do have options younger when our kids are younger. And then those options just keep dwindling down until you're just funneled into like, this is what you got, take it or leave it, and a lot of us parents who have gotten, some really great options and are pushing school districts and pushing and advocating hard are like, no, I'm not going to like settle for these crappy options when they're adults. And I'm just really glad that when we met Sam, she was advocating, and I'm like, what kind of policy, like housing policy, would help you? Like, so in our advocacy work, we're always trying to help families like advocate for better housing. But what I get back from our leadership, both at the state and federal level, is like, this is complex. There's a lot that goes into this. Like, what exactly can we do? And I'm like, I don't know, just fix it. So what do you guys think? Like, Sam, what policies, when you were at DC, what were you talking to our reps about, and what would help?
So I think this would be a great kind of segue into talking about how we need data, because data backs everything up. And that's actually something that we are starting to kick off here in October. And I can let Emily speak more to that. But I think first and foremost, especially coming from special education, I mean, everything relies on data. And quite frankly, we have very limited or next to none, and it's very extremely outdated. And it does not necessarily align with what individuals with IDD and their families actually want and that they need. And so I can let Emily kind of touch a little bit more on our specific housing market study, which will be kicking off here in the next couple of months, which we're so elated about.
Thank you, Sam. Lindsay and Jen, we think, as we've looked at these issues, like Sam said, you can't have good policy if you aren't making policy decisions based on data. And when you look at the data that's available for adults with intellectual and developmental disabilities, there's an amazing project out of the University of Minnesota called the Residential Information Systems Project, but it only aggregates data from state governments every 5 years. And it really only addresses the 22% of the total IDD population that is known to or served by their state governments. And that represents about 1.5 million people out of the 8 million people total in the United States with IDD. So you can imagine if you're only looking at a sample of 22% of the population to make housing decisions. And like Sam pointed out, a lot of times that data, it's dated, it's indirect data. It doesn't go directly to the source and ask people what they want. And it's largely demographical, age, where are you living, some broad buckets of diagnoses. So we've found that very limiting. And we've partnered with an organization called First Place Global Leadership Institute. This is an incredible resource. Their website is firstplaceglobal.org. And they really are a think tank that are working really hard to come up with research-based solutions to advance issues that face adults with autism and IDD. One of their biggest areas of focus is housing. They put together a groundbreaking report a few years ago called A Place in the World, and that's available on their website, firstplaceglobal.org. And what Place in the World did, number one, it established a common language framework so that real estate professionals and real estate developers, nonprofits, direct support provider agencies, and the government can all speak from a similar language and similar playbook when talking about housing and support needs for adults with IDD. It then looks at several successful models of different types of housing all over the country. And then it has 2 white papers, one that addresses the policy gaps in federal housing, and two that looks at part of the reason why those gaps exist is because of the lack of data. And what came out of that was this opportunity to conduct housing market analyses in local communities. So like Sam said, we are partnering with First Place Global. In October, we will kick off this process, which involves asking adults and their families directly about what they want in housing and support needs. So I think when you hear that, oh, it's such a complex problem, I've kind of like, well, why don't you ask people what they want? I mean, like, right? Like,
Crazy concept.
imagine that.
Yeah, the world would be a better place if people did that. Just ask.
Yeah.
Right? I mean, and we live in Cincinnati, Ohio, home of Procter & Gamble, the world's biggest consumer goods company. There is not a bottle of Tide on a shelf that hasn't been market tested by consumers to make sure that it moves off that shelf as quickly as possible. So in that spirit, we are kicking off this housing market analysis in October. You can learn more about our process on our website, EmpowerMeLiving.com, and go to housing market analysis. There's a form there for people to express interest in participating. It will, we will be collecting data, again, directly from adults and their families. There's a plain language version of the survey, and a regular version of the survey, and a Spanish version of the survey. So we're really excited about the multiple ways we'll be able to reach adults and families. We will gather all of that information, analyze it, and then we're going to convene a group of community leaders to look at the data and the results. And when we're done, we'll have this comprehensive report on what people want in their housing and supports. At the student housing company, anytime we decided that we were going to build a project in a market, we would go into that market and we'd say, okay, University of Cincinnati, for example, this is the market that on campus, there are X number of units that house X number of students. There are 100,000 students that attend. I'm totally making that up. I don't know how many students attend UC, but a lot, right? And so you could identify, oh, well, yes, this market can support an extra 1,000 units, and this is the best unit mix, and these are the amenities. That doesn't exist for people with IDD. No one's asking, so we're gonna ask.
Yeah, I love it. Thank you. I appreciate you asking, because I agree. It's like, when you think about where the data it really comes from, we're leaving a lot of people out, because so many people are not, even though we think we try to do a good job, and at the ARC, this is like our number one mission, is to make sure that people are connected to all their resources. There are just people that just aren't connected, and they're connected sometimes during their lives, but then they disconnect, like we all do. Like when I don't need help, I'm not connected. So
well, and I think to that point too, and going back to how, we've done so much with early intervention, it starts with, you get EI, early intervention, from birth to 2. And then upon turning 3 years old, then you can qualify for special education services within the public school system.
Actually, in the last, oh,
no, go.
They have extended it to 5. I'm on the Governor's Council for EI.
On the EI?
And so they have moved it to 5. So there's all these new programs that are rolling out this month for it. There's something called Sparkle, where teachers in preschools and daycares now have the opportunity to be able to do the assessments and be able to send parents to where they need to go within the county. And
oh, that's wonderful.
So, yeah, but they didn't have it when Jen and I did EI. Like at 2.5, you started your graduation process, and at 3 they were like, "Okay, see ya."
Yeah. See, but why do we not have that kind of structure for our adults? Right. Because then moving into, when they turn 3, and then you can, defer your diploma until the age of 22 in the state of Ohio, which is great. But then, we run into this cliff effect right after high school where, when you're in school, you have a place to go Monday through Friday, whatever your hours are, 7 to 3, 8 to 4, whatever that is. And you have peers that are your same age, or at least people around you that, you have built-in people. and friendships, where you also have intervention specialists and related services tied in by law, by a legal document, and the IEP or 504, by the minute. I mean, you have objectives and goals that are based on the minute of what people need to be serving your child. And then as soon as you graduate after the age of 22, I mean, it's nothing. You have to figure it out for yourselves. And so that's what we're really trying to do at EmpowerMe Living is we first and foremost recognize that we can build homes all day long, and a home can look different to anybody. It could be an apartment, it could be a micro home as an accessory dwelling unit, it could be a single family home, condo, whatever it is. It could be a group home. However, if we don't have things in place to help facilitate social opportunities, because there's a huge need and there's a huge social isolation barrier, whether you're living at home or in your own independent house out in the community, there is a huge barrier with social isolation. People have to figure out employment. They have to figure out day program, HPC providers. There's so financial planning. And that was something that we advocated in DC was SSI. And there are so many intricacies with adults, yet there is there's next to nothing in terms of how we support them in these huge decision-making processes. And so what we're trying to do is to not only combat the social isolation with really just being vessels. Not one person can make a community, but we can help individuals feel connected and get connected by providing opportunities for folks, but also to help them gain and retain independent living skills. And independent living skills isn't just, oh, I know how to do my dishes and my laundry. No, it's how to be a good roommate. What does healthy lifestyle choices look like for me? Because a lot of my friends that did move out into the group home setting, a lot of them are now tackling this huge issue of health and wellness and making those educated choices in terms of what they're going to eat, how often that they need to move their bodies. And so really incorporating that into our programming is something that is very, very important to us. And by no means, like, we are in supplement to day programming and personal care providing. We are not a day program ourselves. We're trying to fill in the holes where our folks need it the most, to really give this continuity of care aspect, and to create a nice, safe living environment for the folks that we serve and their families too, because it is a huge decision to be able to feel comfortable living alone or having your loved one be able to live independently. So that's something that we definitely take into high critical importance at EmpowerMe Living.
And it's a balance, because I think for parents, like, we're all like, we just want our kids to be safe,
Yes.
And then you have like my friends who actually do have adults, and they're like, yeah, I mean, I just want him to live here with me. And the adult's like, I don't want to live here. And it's like, oh, I forgot about that. Like, sometimes you forget, like, trying to set everything up for them. I'm like, and I tell my kids this all the time, like, I set that school up for you. You better go to school. Like, that school's doing so much for you. That IEP is beautiful. And then my friend's like, but I don't want to go to school. And I'm like,
I said that IEP back 4 times. They hate me there. You're going to sit there.
Exactly. And then I forget the fact that, like, oh yeah, he actually has to like physically walk through the doors and like be motivated to go. But I mean, it occurred to me a couple times where I've met adults where it's like, oh, you have to plan for what they actually want, and which is not to live with mom, which is not to live with like certain people. Like, some people might want to live on their own. Some people might want to live with a couple roommates. Some people might want to live like amongst a big crowded like apartment complex. Some people do not and cannot, in some cases. And so I like the idea of like having all these options. And so who do you envision, Emily, like living in these facilities? Can you talk a little more about like how big is this array of people with disabilities and intellectual disabilities and developmental disabilities and beyond physical disabilities?
That's a great question, Jen. I mean, we really envision anyone living in our communities, right? It's how do we design places and spaces that are accessible for everybody? And there's a lot of parallels, I think, if you look at the macroeconomics of what's going on in our country. Affordable housing is an issue across the board. We have aging seniors that are experiencing physical disabilities, just like you mentioned. So how do we design smarter housing stock that's accessible really for anybody? And I think, again, the point is options. Like if someone wants to live in a community with peers or with, there just should be options, and that's part of our point. So everything, again, we look at, we're really excited right now. For example, we are getting ready to close on our first property in Anderson Township.
Congratulations.
Yes, thank you so much. And we're really excited about this property. It is in the heart of a great community. And that's important. Like one of the fundamentals of real estate is location. So like looking for good locations is important. But for this first project, what's really cool about this opportunity is that it's a 2-story building. We're gonna keep the first floor office. It's an office building right now. There's a lot of office space around the country that is not being utilized. And what if we could convert that into housing? And that is happening in some instances. So like with what we're doing. So our first property is located in Anderson Township, right in the heart of a great part of the community, close to the Anderson Historical Society, which has an incredible urban garden that always has events going on, right by Turpin High School. We have a paved walking trail nearby. We have our neighborhood convenience store with one of the kindest owners who knows everyone's name. He knows who comes in. There's a great like neighborhood family favorite restaurant. There's lots of employment opportunities. We're 5 minutes from the library. We're 2 minutes from a Kroger. It's in really great location. So the first floor is going to be office space, and the top floor we're converting into 10 1-bedroom and studio apartments, really targeted towards serving adults with IDD. That's something, as we think about long term, something that's important to us is as we build projects and communities and expand out, making sure that the intention to make sure that units for and housing for adults with IDD, that it remains that, right? So how do we make sure that if a property gets sold down the road somehow, there's some kind of mechanism that protects that, you know what, we need to make sure that a portion of this project remains inclusive housing for adults with IDD. That's something that's really important when we think long term. So this is a really exciting opportunity that we have here with our first project. Something very important that we are incorporating into this project, 1 or 2 of the units, we're still working through the details on this, but we plan to set them aside as short-term rentals for people to test out transitioning to independent living. Because Jen, you hit on it. A lot of adults are at home. They might not want to be at home, but if you can't see any options on where to go, or if your option is to be kind of locked into a long-term arrangement and you're not sure if it's going to work, what if we had an option where you could rent for a week, rent for a month, and test out, get a feel for, okay, for Luke, for example, okay, this went great for Luke, but we also identified here's some things that we need to work on. Like we need to work on Luke's cooking skills, or we need to make sure that Luke locks his door and doesn't let people in all the time, whatever the skills are, right? So you can get an assessment. We got this idea from a friend of ours who this opportunity kind of fell in their lap for their daughter. Their older daughter had a lease, 1 month left on an apartment lease, and they were getting ready to move their other daughter out into the community. But before they did that, they took advantage of this month that was already paid for, and they were able to test it out and see what, okay, like this is the type of tech that we need to have in the home. Here are things that we need to work on. Here are things that went great, so that families can have and adults can have an opportunity to get comfortable with this idea before they're committed long-term to something. So that's something that we're really excited about, and we hope to incorporate in more projects. We're also looking at, our goal is to have a network starting in Cincinnati, but all over the city, right? So Anderson is just one place. And then we're looking north, we're looking over on the west side, and we've got a couple exciting partnerships that we're continuing to work on, but we're excited about our first project.
Mason area, maybe.
Yeah, you know, and again, like there's lots of cool things. We have a concept that we're really excited about. I mentioned it earlier, and Sam touched on it too. It's called a micro home. So affordable housing is a key hot topic, right? How do you make things affordable, and how do you make things accessible? And Sam touched on like this idea of continuity. So aging in place is a big deal. And again, these are issues that affect almost everybody, not just people with IDD. These are some pretty global issues, what we're talking about. So we've worked on this concept called a micro home, and it's a 400 to 800 square foot single family freestanding home. It's a permanent slab on grade structure. It's not a tiny home. There's not like a loft space and, you know, you got your shower over your toilet. It's not that. It is a single family home. It's a smaller footprint. Imagine a 1-bedroom apartment plucked out of an apartment building and freestanding. We love this concept for many reasons. Number one, it's going to be universally designed, and we can standardize the design so that we can build them more effectively and efficiently. When you can do that, you can lower your costs. And when you can lower your costs, guess what? They can be more affordable. And big factor that goes into what is hard about housing affordability is the cost to acquire land.
Yes.
It's really hard to find 10 acres, Jen, up in Mason and make the numbers work because it's expensive. Yeah. But what if we could find 1 acre, and we've done a feasibility study where we can fit 14 micro homes, which make a beautiful arrangement for people with IDD, for seniors that want to downsize. My husband, Mark, jokes that he's like, I want one in our backyard so that I can get a break from our house full of kids and dogs, right? And I'm like, yeah, that sounds great. As long as you can have it for a week and I can have it for a week, and we'll switch. So we're really excited about that concept, and how could that be a part of a bigger mixed use development community that has many different styles of housing, which is one of the projects that we have in the works right now. So again, this idea of being innovative and forward thinking, and home ownership is an important point of focus for us. How do we help adults and families structure an arrangement where an adult with IDD, like Luke, could own his home, right? And how do we set that up so that is protected and safe? But you guys went to Washington to advocate for raising the SSI limit, which is huge. A home is a protected asset. They cannot count that towards your $2,000 SSI limit. So that's something that's really important. And homeownership, we think, is a great opportunity for adults with ADD.
I think, but it's really exciting. It's like, you don't even consider that to be an option, and you guys just opened another door that like was closed in my brain. So I have some little pricklies on my arm here.
Oh,
that excites me because
it's exciting. It's exciting. The possibilities are very exciting.
Well, especially because the microhome can also be used as an accessory dwelling unit, which last year the city of Cincinnati passed that ordinance where you can have a microhome in your backyard, which is really exciting because it provides that flexibility of, okay, well, my adult child is ready to move out, but I'm not quite ready. Or maybe they need to, harness a few more skills before we're really ready for them to maybe move into their own apartment or their own home somewhere else that is not as close by. So it's just a really nice way that we can broaden that flexibility. And on top of that, it enhances the home's value. I think, and I probably shouldn't say this, but I think it's like 22%, I think. Is that correct, Emily?
Yeah, Sam, I think there's been some studies that have been shown that adding an accessory dwelling unit to your property increases its value by about 20%. So when you're looking at the economics of, does it make sense to add this to my property and make this investment? Usually it pencils out really well. And then you have another asset. So I don't know, let's say we did build one on our property, for example, and Luke lived there for a couple years and decided he was ready to move out. Well, now, I have an option for my dad to live in, or I can rent it out to somebody. I could Airbnb it, and the city of Cincinnati allows Airbnb. It has to be, for an accessory dwelling unit, it has to be a separate exterior entrance, and there's a couple other parameters. But this is really exciting that the city of Cincinnati is thinking about this and being a little bit more forward thinking. These exist all over California, which, as we all know, has a serious housing affordability issue. So this, they've kind of started the wave, and luckily, we didn't have to wait 20 years, like Mark Twain says that everything happens in Cincinnati 20 years later. Luckily, we didn't have to wait. So the microhome is a really cool option.
Yeah. And what I'm hearing from you guys as we kind of wind down, and like as we're learning so much about this, is there is a huge element of community integration, which is really important to us at the ARC, which is really important, overall, all the studies show that the more included our kids are, the better off, the more successful they are, and, getting employment and everything else. So just to kind of make us feel even better, talk to us about why that's such a facet to what you're doing, and as opposed to, kind of buying a property and having like all the nursing care there ready to go. Each person kind of has their own support. So like, we're not going to, we're always worried, like if you're going to build something, then, what happens way down the line to that building? Is that going to be one of these institutional settings that we used to have, and like then we're right back where we started? So talk a little bit about that community integration piece, and like how the direct support professionals are used, and how we can make sure that that kind of stays with the person instead of like with the building.
I will touch on that, Jen, because you hit on, and then I'll turn it over to Sam because she can really talk more about community integration. I want to say two things. Number one, yes, it is better for our kids, but I think like it is better for all of us. When people are more included, it is better for all of us. It makes all of society better. And, we started off at the top of the conversation, social isolation, housing. These are all issues that yes, they affect adults with IDD, but they affect everybody. I mean,
especially after COVID.
Yeah, well, yeah, the Surgeon General has a whole effort around social isolation for everybody. So if we feel like if we can unlock this, this is going to be just a huge win all around. Yeah. I think the second thing that I will say is this idea of consumer controlled setting versus provider controlled setting. And when we think about, one of the things that has been complex to figure out is how do we make sure that people that have higher support needs, higher medical support needs, how do we make sure that they're getting good quality care? Yeah. Some of the current models like don't really do that effectively. So with that's an area that really needs to be focused on. But institutions, people were forced to go there, right? It was not a choice, and it was controlled by the government. So single provider, ours is flipping the script. This is like our project here in Anderson Township. It's a consumer controlled setting. We are not the homemaker personal care services provider. People can bring in their own. That's the idea. Because when you have the provider owns the setting and owns the care delivery, like if someone doesn't like their setting or someone doesn't like the care, guess what? They're kind of stuck because those two are tied. So our goal is to, disconnect those two and make sure that these are consumer controlled. Freedom of choice is really important. So
that's also not to say that some of what we see out there, like for instance, St. Joseph's Home is an absolutely beautiful place for people to go. And had my brother still been alive to this day, that would have been a perfect place for him because of his medical complexities and being around and having somebody, because he would have needed 24/7 care. And because we have such an HPC provider crisis right now, that's very, very important. And for a setting like Daniel, that would have been perfect. And so kind of our thought process is adding to the current structure, just to give people even more of a choice. And not to say that this choice is great for everybody. Our goal is that, obviously, but we want to add to that to really make sure that people have options just like we do. People with IDD deserve the same constitutional right of being able to choose where they live. And that's really what we're trying to do. And then kind of going into the community integration thing, that's everything that we do. We have that in mind. And because we recognize that we can build houses all day, but that doesn't mean that a person is integrated into their community and that they're engaged in their community, because community is a feeling. It's not just we build a bunch of houses and make a neighborhood and call it a day. And so EmpowerMe Living is that vessel to kind of bring people together. And so even if you live in a micro home accessory dwelling unit, we have this network of opportunities for social engagement, as well as an educational life skills factor. I call it Adulting 101. We have it tonight if anybody's interested. But we all need those refreshers. It's not just for folks with IDD, but there is explicit instruction that might need to still be had throughout a person's life. And so that's really what we're trying to do. And then bringing the greater community in, as well as getting us out, is what we're really trying to strive to do. And really taking the current framework of like, okay, what are we doing socially out in the community right now? And personally, I don't believe that just going to Kroger is a community outing. We need to be doing more. We need to be doing more that people actually want to do and getting creative. It's not just, let's just do this for our folks with IDD, or we'll go bowling beside people. We want to be so immersed with everybody that we can have tailgates. We can have things that young people or old people, everybody wants to actually do, and that we can do it together. And so having this creative kind of mindset coming into, okay, how do we structure and facilitate these programs? And ultimately being the facilitator. We aren't conducting this. We are just helping bring people together because we have that expertise to lend. And then another exciting thing about this office that is being turned into an apartment unit is that we are absorbing the vacant office space next to us, and that will be our community training room in a big old flex space, which is awesome. So it's not only where we can provide our programming, but our friends and other organizations, the Down Syndrome Association, Collective Visions, all of our friends and other organizations, because that's a big part of what we do too, is linking arms rather than burying them, because there are professionals in different facets working with this community in amazing ways. And so how can we harness that, bring them in, bring our folks all together to really create an actual community, not just what we think is a community of just a large body of individuals. No, an actual engaged and integrated community where people have the choice to do whatever programming that they want, whether it's, music with, Melodic Connections or Keys for Success, or bringing other organizations in and really giving people options and understanding what all is out there. Because back to the whole cliff effect of after high school, you're fending for yourself as a family and as an individual of what is out there. And so what we really want to do is try to be that organization that finds all of these organizations, puts it all in one. And we've created a Padlet. We have, when you're integrated into not even just an EmpowerMe Living home, but within our network, that's where we can share these resources, because that is so critically important is for people to actually be engaged in their community. They need to know what is actually out in the community. And it's not just what EmpowerMe Living is doing. There are so many amazing organizations that I get the luxury of it being my full-time job to go out and to experience them and to learn about them and to figure more out, and then link up in terms of partnerships or getting just their information spread to our individuals in our network. And I think that is what's going to make and set Cincinnati aside, and especially with this housing market analysis, sharing that information, pushing the policy, and really just cultivating what an actual community is supposed to be. So although this community room in and of itself isn't going to accomplish that, I do think that it's going to be a wonderful, wonderful avenue for us bringing more people together and getting more resources out there and into people's hands. So, and then on top of that, we have a pilot program right now that I'm running to really figure out what is it that our individuals need. Is it more so virtual programming? Do we want to do more intense or in-person kind of programming? And where is it that we actually need to see? Because you can purchase curriculum. I come from education. Curriculum doesn't always necessarily mesh or align with what the actual need is in terms of, especially in housing and independent living. And so figuring out what people are actually wanting and where the holes really are, not just where we think they are, is incredibly important. And so we're doing our due diligence in terms of having this small kind of group to figure out, first and foremost, what kind of software are we going to be using? Which right now we're using a software platform called, that's a thumbs down, but I mean thumbs up. We're using a platform called LifeLoop, but that's really to ultimately bring this calendar together where, rather than going into an individual organization's calendar and then adding all of these into your own personal, how can we bring this all together for easy access to what's actually out there, and not just what EmpowerMe Living is doing, but what our friends and other organizations that do amazing work are also doing.
Sounds like you're doing like my job for me when the kids are adults, which is what I like to hear, because I'm going to be burned out and really tired at 22. My kids are, and I have two who are like right after each other. So I'm going to be like, thank you, Sam. Here you go. Figure it out for me.
Here's my Padlet.
I love the passion. You guys are both
right?
Perfect people to be doing this. It's great.
Well, thank you. Thank you. And we want you all using this community space, and maybe can even like for the families that are not only like special needs financial planners, using that space for workshops and stuff, but also for family forums or just places for people to convene and to come together. And because families are also incredibly important within this process of housing and adulting. I'm 28 years old and I call my mama for everything.
I still call my mom.
I need that woman for everything. Do not tell her that she is always right, because she'll get too big of a head, but she is always right. So how can we kind of cultivate that? And that's ultimately our goal here. We don't have all the answers, but we're hoping that, bringing more and more people together can really help answer a lot of these questions for the folks that we're trying to serve.
How can people find out more? Tell us your website again and anything else that they might want to know so we can connect people.
Yes, love it. Okay, so it's our company name, EmpowerMeLiving.com. There is a contact form on there if people are interested in signing up for our newsletter and getting plugged in about housing. There's also a section on there for the housing market analysis. If people are interested, we really want to get as many adults and families as possible to participate in this study. Again, we feel like this is key to helping drive policy changes. Going directly to the source and asking, what do you want in your housing and supports is so important. And so going to our website, EmpowerMeLiving.com, there's the housing market analysis section, and then there's just the general contact form. You can follow us on LinkedIn, which is EmpowerMe Living. We're really excited. Thank you for talking to us. We're super excited. And thank you. I will say a couple things. Number one, the work that the ARC does and the work that parents and adults and self-advocates have done before us puts us in a position, and we look at it as our great honor and privilege to carry forward that work, so that by the time that Luke is an adult, maybe we don't have to be working so hard, right? Like, so really pay it forward And we've been able to do that because of the Lindsays and Jens and the Sues and the Julies and all of the parents and adults and people that have come before us and self-advocates that have come before us to get to where we are now. We still have a ways to go, but we look at it as our job to pick up the mantle and advance things forward. And then just a big thank you for letting us be on the call today and getting to share our story and share more about what we're up to. And we really look forward to getting engaged and connected. And thank you for the work that the ARP does. Sam, any closing thoughts?
All of that. Retweet all of that. And it was an absolute pleasure to meet you both and to advocate beside you in DC back in April. And I hope that we do it again. And also come on down. Our training room will be open in the next couple of weeks. I would love to have you down here and
I'm gonna be like the first group that I'll bring some moms in there. We'll just
oh my gosh. Even for just like a mom's night, like a hang, like it's a space, again, it's a space for any organization that wants to come
meant to be
use it.
flexible.
It's an extra community space.
Thank you both. It's so nice.
Yes, thank you for everything.
Thank you, Lindsay.
Thank
you, Ken.
Bye.
Bye.